What is that determines what sort of person you become? Is a child's future personality already determined at birth? Or is a newborn baby like a blank sheet waiting to be written on by life? Is our personality and behavior determined by anything, or do we choose for ourselves who we are, create ourselves out of nothing? These are important questions because our views on these questions radically affect the way we see the world, our attitudes to other people, and the way we work with other people. There are many different perspectives from which you can look at human growth and development. You can look at from primarily a biological or sociological or a psychological viewpoint. The sociological point of view tends to see individual thoughts, feelings, and beliefs as being socially constructed, the product of forces in society as a whole. The overall focus of this chapter is to understand human behavior from the social psychology viewpoint, which tends to concentrate on the interaction between individual psychological development and social context. Biological factors affecting human behavior. For some time, there was a discussion among the psychologists about the relation of heredity and environment in the development of human behavior. In this discussion, arguments were given from both sides and data was gathered on the basis of observation and experimentation. It was found by this data that human behavior depends upon both heredity and environment. The factors affecting personality can be divided into two classes: biological and social. The biological factors affecting the development of human's personality are three: ductless glands, physique, and nervous system. Ductless glands. Ductless glands send their secretions directly to the blood without ducts. Their secretions are called hormones. These hormones are responsible for many changes in the personality. Each gland secretes one or more types of hormones. A description of the effect of some of the ductless glands will show the extent to which personality is influenced by them. Pancreas. Pancreas sends insulin to the blood. The amount of sugar in the blood depends upon the amount of insulin. When the deficiency of insulin, that is sugar, is in the blood, the mental capacities are weakened and the personality of the individual seems less balanced with mood swings, irritated temperaments, and increase in fear. Thyroid. Thyroid gland has a very important function in the development of physical structure as well as in mental development. If it is absent since the very birth, body and mind of the child do not develop. Cretins and embolices are the result of the absence of thyroid gland. Its destruction causes a disease known as myxedema. This disease creates laziness in man. The activities of the mind, as those of muscles, are slackened. The memory becomes weak, concentration and thinking becomes difficult. In the period of development, the excess of the activity of thyroid glands result in rapid physical growth, especially the development of height. An excessive activity of this gland results in tension, irritation, worry, and instability in man. Thus, with the increase or decrease of the deficiency in the activity of thyroid gland, the activity of the body as well as the mind also increases and decreases. But this does not mean that the increase and decrease of the activity in the body is always due to the effect of thyroid gland only. Occasionally, it might be due to the other causes as well, but thyroid gland does play an important part in them. Adrenal. Adrenal gland secretes adrenaline. Adrenaline has an important influence upon the human behavior. Its excess creates hypersexual traits in men and women. Its deficiency in women responsible for the absence of rounded encounters and feminine voice. It mobilizes the capacities in the time of emergency. The excess of adrenaline causes rapid heartbeat, high blood pressure, and the postponement of the activity of the intestines. The individual having less adrenaline feels relaxation in the muscles, more sweat, and pupils of the eye are extended. An entire absence of adrenaline results in the disease known as Addison's disease. In this disease, one feels weakness and lethargy in the body. The power of resisting disease is lessened. The skin becomes black. The power of resisting heat and cold is lessened, and behavior becomes irritated. Gonads. The secretion of gonads, that is, sex hormones, is an important factor influencing personality. In the adolescence, there is a special increment in sex hormones. Hence, changes are observed in the individuals according to their sex. In the boy, one finds the appearance of masculine characteristics such as beard, mustaches, and a high-pitched voice, while in the girl, there is a development of mammary glands and appearance of other womanly traits. The process concerning pregnancy are very much influenced by sex hormones. Pituitary. The hormone secreted by the pituitary glands controls other glands. The hormones secreted by the front part of the pituitary glands increase the activity of other glands as well. The hormones secreted by the back part of the pituitary glands control the blood pressure and the metabolism of water in the body. These hormones also affect physical growth. In the time of physical growth, the bones and muscles of the individual grow speedily due to the activity of these glands. In its excess, the height can go even up to 7 to 9 feet. After excessive activity, this gland becomes very much inactive. These very tall persons die at an early age. If the activity of the pituitary glands is very much deficient during the period of development, the individual remains a midget, though the intellectuality is normal and the physical structure is not unattractive. If the activity of this gland is normal during the development period and becomes excessive afterwards, the hands, feet, nose, and lower jaw becomes broad. This state is known as acromegaly. The effect of hormones is influenced by hereditary as well as the environmental factors. However, the excess or deficiency in their activity creates some changes quite apparent in the behavior of the individual. It is not necessary that the excess of secretion of any one of the particular glands should always show some influence in the body. Physique. Another important biological factor affecting the personality is physical structure. It is sometimes observed in the daily life that the fat men are easygoing and social, while the thin persons are self-controlled, irritated, and unsocial. Thus, the physical structure has some relation with the temperament. The relation of physical structure and temperament has not been definitely established. More studies are required in this direction. The studies conducted so far have been mostly on college students. Before one arrives at some definite conclusion, studies must be conducted on adult persons as well. But even after that, the problem of the basis of correlation remains unanswered. Similarly, by correlation between temperament and physics, the former cannot be taken to be the result of the latter. It should also be remembered in this context that the physical makes a difference in others' behavior towards a particular person. It is observed that our behavior towards different individuals is modified to some extent according to their physical structure. This difference in our behavior makes a change in their personality. Hence, a particular difference should not be supposed to be due to physical structure alone, but also due to others' behavior towards the particular person, though the former may be more important. Body chemistry. Another important biological factor affecting personality is body chemistry. In ancient times, the differences of temperament were supposed to be due to the differences of chemical elements in different men. Thus, the nervous personality was taken as the result of nervous fluid. It was supposed that the sanguine person have an excess of blood, the choleric person has an excess of bile, phlegmatic person has excess of phlegma, and melancholic person has an excess of spleen. This principle is not accepted in modern psychology, but still no psychologist denies the relation of personality with the proportion of chemical elements in the body. These chemical elements are of two types. Some reach the body from outside while some are created in the body itself. Thus, the drugs have sufficient effect on behavior. The behavior of the drunkard is an example of such effect. Different types of intoxicating drugs have a clear influence upon the personality of the individual. The deficiency of different vitamins also causes some change in the personality. With the increase or decrease of the quantity of sugar in the body, the physical and mental state of the man is very much changed. The conveniences one finds differences in the individual personality. Difference is also noticed after a long illness. Besides the above mentioned biological factors, many other factors influence personality: sex, intelligence, and nervous system, to name a few. Influence of home. The environments of different individuals are very much different from one another, and so also their effects, but the influence of environment on human behavior can be roughly classified into that of home, school, and society. All these three play an important part in the development of human behavior. The environment of the home has a comprehensive influence on the development of human behavior. This influence, as general rule, is according to the patterns found in a particular culture. In the family, the relation of child with the parents is the most intimate. The cultural development of the child is very much influenced by the behavior of the parents. For example, a child brought up in an Indian family will be very much different in behavior than another brought up in a Western home. But even in the same culture, much difference can be observed in the parent-child relationship in different families. For example, generally the child has a respectable place in Indian family, but all Indian parents do not sufficiently love and sympathize with child. In such circumstances, much repression is observed in child's behavior. Child becomes an introvert and often enjoys in his dreams daydreams, and imagine things which are denied by the parents. The influence of the presence of the parental love again is not the same in the case of all children. A child may become aggressive while another becomes submissive in circumstances. On the other hand, if the parents show excessive affection towards the child may become an extremist and excessively dependent upon the parents. A child excessively ignored shows different types of conflicts in the behavior. Children brought in the psychological clinics for the cure of defects of the behavior showed that an important cause of their defect was the behavior of their parents towards them. According to Sigmund Freud, the tendency to depend upon the parents in the childhood is manifested in the tendency to depend upon the leader in the adult age. If the child is allowed to freedom in the matters concerning belongings, food, clothes, and books, the child will develop a habit of free will. If all these are decided by the parents, the child will not get an opportunity to utilize the judgment and therefore becomes over-dependent or submissive. Parents are more powerful and efficient than the child. Hence, they are the ideals for the child. The child wants to become like the parent. Thus, the child establishes identification with either of the parent and tries to follow the manners, ways, and behavior of the mother or the father. The child also fulfills frustrated desires through this identification. It has been observed that the little boy wears the big shirt of the father and walks proudly like him with a stick in his hand. This identification with the parents in the childhood is later on converted into the identification of the individual with the leader. By the identification with the leader, the individual is happy in leader's achievements. In the absence of affection and sympathy, the child often turns criminal. While discussing the causes of criminal tendencies, Healy and Bronner have emphasized three factors: the effort to get rid of the painful circumstances, the tendency to revenge for the misbehavior of the father, the effort to satisfy the frustrating desires. The reactions in the parents about the everyday matters in the family and the relation of the mother and the father among themselves also affect the personality of the child. In short, the behavior of the parents and the circumstances in the family affect the personality of the child. It has been observed that in the behavior of the eldest and the youngest, the elder and the younger are not the same in the family. Similarly, it has been found that the parents' behavior towards them is also not the same. This has led the psychologist Alfred Adler to emphasize the importance of birth order in the development of personality. The birth order of the child fixes his status in the family, which decides his roles, which affect the personality. The youngest child is treated with affection by everyone, hence becoming over-dependent. The eldest child becomes self-sufficient and tyrant because, being the only child for a while, the child does not share the rights and things with others. The birth of another child in the family has an important influence on the first child, since it takes away the monopoly in affection and sometimes feels neglected also. Hence, the first child feels jealous with the younger child and tries to regain the rights. On the other hand, the new child is anxious to make a place in the family. The above description of the child's problems based upon the conception of birth order has not been conclusively proved. Researchers have found similar conflicts in different birth orders. Adler has truly said that the individual develops the style of life from pattern of the early life in the family, but there are no grounds to suppose that this style of life remains unchanged in future. It cannot be denied that the environment in the childhood is one of the most important factors determining human behavior, but it is difficult to believe with Freud and Adler that the personality of an individual is completely determined during childhood. Influence of school. School also has an important influence on the personality of the child. In school, both the teachers and classmates influence the personality of a child. Just as in family, the parents are ideals before the child, so are the teachers in the school. The child hates the cruel and strict teachers. On the other hand, the child respects good and sympathetic teachers. The personality of a teacher and the behavior towards the child both exercise important influence on the child's personality. The child tends to identify with the teachers and tries to imitate the ways, manners, and personality traits. This is only with the influential teachers and not with everyone. Thus, teachers mold the personality of the child by their example. Besides, the teacher, classmate, and playmates exercise important influence on the personality of the child. These constitute a group in which every child has a particular status and role corresponding to it. One can see the leader, the daredevil, and the scapegoat child in the group. The leader is the mind of the group who plans adventure and games. The daredevil executes them while scapegoat is left to receive the blame and consequent punishment. In different types of groups of children, different traits of leadership are required according to the purpose. Thus, sometimes the intelligent child leads, while at other times the leader is the daredevil. This particular role in the group determines the future of the individual in society. This, however, is not without exceptions. The development of personality is a complex process, and serious changes are affected in new circumstances which the individual has to face. Influence of society. Society is a web of social relationships. These social relationships connect men and women with one another. These interpersonal relations influence and mold the personality of the individual. In the society, each individual has some peculiar status and roles corresponding to them. For example, in Hindu community, members of the different castes have different social status in the society. The role and functions of an individual are determined by the status. This mechanism controls the behavior of the individuals. Social control is further exercised by traditions, myths, legends, and customs. They determine the style of life of the individual. Individuals cannot behave in the society as they like. The fear of society is sometimes more than the punishment by the state. Therefore, social norms influence even the ways and attitudes of these individuals. This ultimately influences the personality. The individual adopts the prevalent patterns of social behavior. That is the reason one notices so much difference in the behavior and personality of members of different societies. This, however, does not mean that there are no individual differences in the same society. In fact, in every society, one can find men and women who scarcely care for the social norms. But in every case, personality is affected by the social environment. Individuality is an outcome of the process of socialization which is impossible without society. There is constant interaction between the individual and society, and this interaction molds the personality of the individual. Conclusion. Behavior requires integration. This integration of various traits is found differently in different persons. As a general rule, every normal individual has some sort of integration. It is behavior which makes distinction in one man and another. Behavior is the organization of internal and external activities. It includes the external appearance, abilities, aptitudes, and capacities. It is not a collection of traits, but a particular organization of them. It is the total quality of an individual. Individual affects other individuals through their behavior and personality. In short, personality is the total quality of the attitudes, interests, capacities, attitudes, and behavior patterns, and which are manifested in the individual's relations with the environment.